Welcome to another CK podcast. I am your host, Leo Bias. Today we have a very special guest, Deputy Editor of SB Nation, Silver and Screen and Roll, Christian Rivas. How you doing, brother? Thank you so much for coming on and spending some time to talk about Luke Walton.
No problem. I'm happy to be here.
Now, are you shocked that after Luke was fired with the Lakers, he took the job right away with the Kings?
No, not really, because I imagine his conversation with the front office went, "You guys either commit to me, let me know I'm going to be around, or I have an offer on the table from the Kings." So I think a large part of the reason he was let go and was so comfortable leaving was because he had an idea that the Kings job was his if he wanted it.
Now, why do you think he failed in Los Angeles, why that experiment failed last season? And even though he had shown that progression his first 2 years, what do you think really happened there?
I think a large part of it was the LeBron James factor. I think the reason Luke Walton was seen as so successful within his first 2 years was because they were in that rebuilding phase. And when you have a team as young as they did, especially with the roster turnover, they did a 9-win improvement each season he's been at the helm is good. But as soon as you have LeBron James on your roster, it's a championship or bust mentality, and I don't think the front office necessarily built a roster around him capable of winning a championship.
Right on. So before we continue talking about his philosophies on offense, philosophies on defense, this episode is presented by the Detailing Pros Sacramento. They are the best mobile detailers in all of Northern California. So if you are looking for interior and exterior detailing, paint correction, make sure to follow them and hit them up. You can also find more information on their website, thedetailingprosac.com. Christian, when the game slows down, we obviously know that Luke Walton likes to play an up-tempo type offense, just like the Kings did last season. But when it slows down, my question is, because I didn't watch Laker games like you did, does he run his offense through his bigs or through his guards? Or does it depend on matchups? What's his philosophy like when the game slows down?
Unfortunately, for Kings fans, I think when they're not running in transition, you're going to see a lot of isolation ball, a lot of post ups with centers, which I guess with when you have a player like Marvin Bagley who can post up and ISO at that 4 or 5 position, that won't be so much a problem. But the Lakers the last 2 years have had the likes of Brooke Lopez and JaVale McGee manning that position, so those possessions don't always end in the best ways. They don't always end with scoring, but yeah, definitely the bulk of the offense from Luke Walton is going to come in transition.
Okay, so you're saying right now, since the Kings do have a Marvin Bagley, he's going to probably play that old type of throw it in, let him do what he wants, kind of like how Dave Yeager did it with Zebo the previous year. Because if that's the case, that's not good. Because I feel like you should take that Rockets approach and really run pick and rolls and everything through your guards, because you do have one of the most talented guards in the NBA in De'Aaron Fox, and one of the best shooters in the NBA in Buddy Hield. But if he's going to elect to go playing that slow tempo in the half court, then that's kind of unfortunate, right?
Yeah, and but I think the thing that Kings fans should keep in mind is the whole appeal to bringing Luke Walton in is the fact that he comes from that Golden State Warriors line of coaching, learned under Steve Kerr, and I think Luke Walton has a better chance of replicating that Golden State Warriors style offense that the Lakers wanted him to, because of the personnel on the roster, because you do have a Darren Fox and Buddy Hield, and by no means are they Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, but they're more like Steph Curry and Klay Thompson than Lonzo Ball and Brandon Ingram. So I think if that's his plan with the Warriors, if that's what Vlade Divac sold to him in his interview, saying you're coming in to the Kings with that expectation of bringing that Golden State Warriors style offense, I think there's a good chance that he starts over new with the Kings in Sacramento.
Well, that's a good thing then. So his defensive rating, his first year was awful. He was the worst it was a worse one that they ranked 30th. And then the following year, he drafted Lonzo Ball, and they improved from 30th to 13th. Is that more of the players around him, or was it his principles on defense?
It's absolutely his principles, and I think that's probably one of the most underrated aspects of Luke Walton's coaching, is that for 2 straight years now, because even this year, before all the injuries hit the roster, they were a top 10 defense and top 3 defense at some points in the season. And while Lonzo Ball had a great amount to do with that, the Lakers didn't have the defensive personnel to be a top 3 defensive team. I mean, LeBron James hasn't played both ends of the floor for quite some time. Lance Stevenson and Rajon Rondo's defensive reputation is better than their defense that they played over the past few years. So the fact that they were a top 3 defense at any point in the season was remarkable. And the same can be said of last season when he had a bunch of first and second year players on the roster. The fact that he got all of those guys to buy in on the defensive end, I think, is a testament to his leadership and what he brings to a locker room.
So if you look league wide, there have been a lot of supportive people, big time media members supporting the move for Luke Walton to the Kings. Is that a testament again to his personality, to his coaching ability, and to the respect that he commands? And do you feel like having LeBron James really just made hell for him? I mean, like I think it was Kyle Kuzma, right, that tweeted out, "Hey, love Luke," and do you feel like he had that type of relationship with his players? And do you think it'll go well here in Sacramento, being so young?
I do think so. I think the biggest thing you have to realize with Sacramento and situation in LA over the past 2 years, the biggest difference is the front office that hires him is going to be a front office that believes in him. The front office that hired him with the Lakers was that regime of Jim Buss and Mitch
Mhm.
Kupchak, and they were only there for a season, or at least only there with Luke for a season. Once they were gone, it was up in the air whether or not Rob Pelinka and Magic Johnson believed in him. And I think after that first season, it was almost a guarantee that he'd be gone after this season, especially with the slow start they had this season. So I think under an organization that believes in him and is willing to be patient with him through his growing pains, it's going to be a stark contrast between what he showed with the Lakers and what he'll probably show in Sacramento.
So, what do you think was the biggest issue with the Lakers last season? Why did things just go into turmoil? And what do you expect this following summer? You have no Magic Johnson. What's going on there?
Well, everyone will point to injuries as the point of the downfall of this season, but every team deals with injuries. I mean, Indiana lost Victor Oladipo midway through the season,
Right.
and still finished as a high seed in the Eastern Conference. And I'm not watching the game right now, but last time I checked, they were up on the Boston Celtics.
By like
The
13
reason
or something.
Right, and I think the reason the Lakers failed as miserably as they did is because they didn't have a roster that was able to survive those injuries. They picked up, I mean, alone they spent $21 million between Rajon Rondo and Contavious Caldwell Pope, and when you have as much cap space as they did last summer, that's just not a good way to spend your money. And you look at the other guys on the team: Lance Stevenson, Michael Beasley, who isn't even with the team anymore. JaVale McGee, who I thought was pretty phenomenal for most of the season. But outside of McGee, that roster just wasn't going to cut it. Yeah, LeBron James has historically thrived around shooters, and you're not going to surround him with shooters. You're setting yourself up and your coach to have an underwhelming season.
So you brought up the Pacers, and I honestly believe that Nate McMillan has done a great job, and that's coaching, not having your star player. Does any of the blame go to Luke Walton as a coach for the failure?
Absolutely. I think the biggest gripes Lakers fans had with him is his personnel choices, his rotations, and I imagine he'll probably have some of those same gripes with Kings fans. Last season, he started the season with Larry Nance Jr. starting at power forward in favor of Julius Randle. That didn't fly over well with Lakers fans. And as you can see, Julius Randle's a superior player to Larry Nance Jr. in most respects. And then, over the past few seasons, and this season most recently, favored playing Rajon Rondo over Lonzo Ball in the fourth quarter for stretches of games. But I think uh, the thing Kings fans can be optimistic about is that there are no there's very little debate when it comes to positions and who's the better player at each position at the Kings roster. When you look at the case of Lonzo Ball and Rajon Rondo, you can make a debate there, at least at some points in the season, that the difference in talent between Lonzo Ball and Rajon Rondo was marginal. But when you look at the Kings roster and you look at guys like Darren Fox, Yogi Ferrell, Frank Mason, there is no debate. Darren
Right.
Fox is far and away the best option. So I think the fact that it's more clear at most positions for the Kings that, this is the clear cut option that you need to play, I think those mistakes will be made less, or at least that's what Kings fans should be hoping.
Right. So I follow Cranges McBasketball. I respect his opinions and his takes. And one of the tweets that really stood out to me before the Kings made the hire was, quote, "I love for Luke to get a spot on a good staff, learn a bit about rotation management and in-game decision making, then run back at the head coaching thing within a better staff. If he runs it back with the same coaching group next year, somewhere I wouldn't anticipate success." How much validity is there to that statement?
I think there's a lot, and I think that's something the front office was hoping he'd do. And it's probably an ultimatum they gave him before they mutually agreed to part ways. Is you need to add a little experience, a little offensive repertoire to your coaching staff because right now it's lacking that. And I think Luke Walton likes his guys. Uh, the one thing Kings fans can look forward to though is the fact that Mark Matson left his position on Luke Walton's coaching staff for another job in Utah today.
Yep.
Judd Buechler left the New York Knicks midway through last season, so he has two vacant spots on his bench right now that he'll have to fill regardless of whether or not he wants to. So there will be changes to his bench. Again, nobody knows. It's so early in the process that nobody knows who it's going to be. But I mean, Kings fans should be hoping that he brings in somebody with a little experience, somebody that has been there before, somebody that's been in the foxhole, because I think Luke Walton would benefit from being around that.
Well, that is something positive that Kings fans should feel. And also, myself, growing up as a Kings fan. Now, I think the biggest question is Luke Walton an improvement over Dave Yeager, or are they eye to eye, or is he worse? What do you
Uh,
think?
I think from just a tactical standpoint, you can probably make an argument that Dave Yeager is an upgrade over Luke Walton.
Right, I
Uh,
agree.
but the thing I think Vlade Divac and the Kings organization are looking at with Luke Walton is what he did in his first, or not even his first 2 years, all 3 years he was with the Lakers. He was such an integral part of building that culture that the organization, Lakers organization, is so proud to flaunt. That's mostly Luke Walton and an indictment of his leadership, his ability to lead guys to get guys to play for each other. If that's what the Kings are hoping for, if the Kings are trying to model their team after the Golden State Warriors, I think Luke Walton's a fantastic start to that to build a culture in that locker room. From an on the court standpoint, he still has a lot to learn. I think again where he is as a his defensive schemes are very good. It's a solid foundation. Um, but his intangibles as a head coach is really what you want in a young team like the Kings that are looking to make that next step. And again, if you can surround him with a seasoned coach to help fill those gaps, I think Kings fans will enjoy having him on their staff.
So, two questions. Will Luke Walton take the Kings to the next level, which is something that Vlade Divac talked about in his press conference? A big reason why he fired Dave Yeager, albeit we know the real
Right,
reason why it was more of a personality thing and not an X and O's.
right.
But do you think Luke Walton will take the Kings to the next level?
Again, I think it all depends on the the plan for his offense. If he can implement the same principles as the Golden State Warriors offense with that Kings team, I think it's perfect because they have the personnel to do it. I mean, hell, they have one of the core members of the Golden State Warriors during that championship run on their team right now.
Right.
Obviously, it's Harrison Barnes, not Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, or Draymond Green. Um, but you still have somebody that's been around that culture, been around that team. So I think there's a very good chance that he could take him to that next level. It just all depends on what he's bringing to the table, whether or not he's going to bring that same offense that he had with the Lakers, or if he's going to try something new.
Now, if he doesn't improve next season, if the Kings don't win more than 39 games, do you think Vlade Divac, regardless of his extension, should be on the hot seat?
Uh, I see. I don't know about that because as the saying goes, Rome isn't built in a day, and the Kings are going to have quite a bit of roster turnover going into next season. Just looking at their contracts, I think Harrison Barnes will probably pick up his player option. I think he'd be silly not to. But beyond that, you have a few guys like Willie Cauley-Stein that are restricted free agents, and he's probably not coming back from what I've read, or at least he doesn't want to be back. I think, given the amount of roster turnover and the fact that it'll be his first year as a head coach, if the improvement isn't substantial, I don't think Kings fans should be too worried because again, it's the first year. I think it'll take a few years for them to take that leap, regardless of the talent they have on their roster.
Well, thank you so much, brother. Where can people read your work? Where can they watch you? Any of you, if you have video work, where can they follow you? All that good stuff.
So you can follow me on Twitter at RadRivas, and you can read my work over on silverscreenandroll.com, where I also have a podcast titled Can You Dig It? Just go on iTunes, look under the Silver Screen and Roll Podcast Network, and I will be there. Have a show up every Thursday, and it's always a good time for Lakers fans. Can't imagine Kings fans would enjoy it too much.
You never know. Some Kings fans are educated enough to learn about other teams, and those are the ones that I love. I appreciate you so much for coming on and spending some time with us, brother. Thank you so much, and hopefully we'll have you soon talking about the success of Luke Walton.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, brother. Appreciate you, man.